welcoming back on the MRSI stage is a very familiar and loved speaker, Manish Makhijani, independent consultant at Positron Advisors. Manish, a newly minted author and former MRSI president with 27 years of global experience in insights and analytics, including 19 years at Unilever, brings unparalleled expertise and a passion for unlocking potential, earning prestigious awards like the Ginny Valentine Award and Insights 250. So please put your hands together for Mr. Manish.
So first of all, thank you MRSI for giving me an opportunity to talk about how to make organizations more consumer-centric. That's what my new book is about, which got released last week. And I'm going to read a little bit of, thank you. And I'm going to read one little section from the book to give you a glimpse of how to make organizations consumer-centric. Of course, I had to pitch to the seminar committee to sort of show them that it's fit with the seminar theme, and hence the topic, Rise to Consumer Centricity. How do you make organizations consumer-centric? When I started thinking about ways to make an organization consumer-centric, I began reflecting on my nearly 2 decades of journey at Unilever to see how they moved up on the continuum. But I also started thinking about what makes a person insightful. And if you could take the traits that make a person insightful and apply them to make an organization insightful about their consumers. Have you noticed that there are some people around you who seem to be more insightful than others? These are people who usually have a knack for explaining something in a simple manner that seems very obvious when you hear it, but not something that might have occurred to you on your own. You would find usually poets, stand-up comedians, creative directors, kind of people who do that quite often, though insightfulness is by no means restricted to such professionals. Consider the famous lines from the Urdu poet Faiz Ahmad Fair. और भी दुख हैं ज़माने में मोहब्बत के सिवा, राहतें और भी हैं वस्ल की राहत के सिवा. These 2 lines succinctly and very poetically, if I may say so, talk about the fact that love and romance have their own place and can't consume your entire being, particularly in the context of doing things for the society around you. How do some people get to be more insightful than others? Is it the ability natural? Is that ability natural? Or can it be fine-tuned? In other words, can people be trained to be insightful? Rebecca Weinberg, one of the world's leading qual researchers and a dear friend, says that insightful people have a few common traits. Let's have a look at them. One is they are observant. They have a keen eye that notices every little thing about people that most others may not. They notice the bedside manner, so to speak, and not just about the behaviors, but even the every little way people behave and react to different situations and how they express themselves. They tend to be a lot more observant, obviously, in the areas or subjects of their interest than everything in general. They are also very curious. Insightful people don't have to make a lot of effort to observe others, but it comes naturally to them because they're genuinely curious. They're curious about how people behave, how people think, and what makes them tick. They don't have to be experts in human psychology, although that helps, of course, but they have an intuitive sense about it. My friend Poonam Kumar, who's the leading global expert in Needscope in Canada, used to say that we researchers are in the field because we have vulgar curiosity about our consumers, about people. This term vulgar curiosity has sort of stayed with me because I think it aptly describes the almost uncontrollable urge to observe, understand, and analyze people that becomes a habit and sometimes even a compulsion. These people, insightful people, can connect the dots. When you're curious about something and observing things about that phenomenon, you're constantly connecting dots and trying to understand that phenomenon. You're automatically generating hypotheses and testing them at the back of your mind till you arrive at hypotheses that test positive with good amount of evidence that you've observed. It's a bit like what your mind is going through when you are watching a gripping murder mystery. You keenly watch all the characters and try to guess who the real murderer is at the back of your mind. No one trains you for guessing the murderer, but if you are interested, you get drawn and start self-learning as you watch more and more such movies. Good insights people are reflective. They're able to reflect on what they've learned, no matter what the source of the information is. Says Chitkala Nishandar, also a friend, but head of marketing for the APAC at 3M. they can cut to the chase and express it very pithily. If you have really understood the phenomenon and have given it considerable thought, you would be able to articulate it clearly and succinctly. Key ingredients for this, therefore, are clear understanding, considerable amount of thinking or poking and prodding it from different directions to get full clarity on the best way of expressing it. This does not happen spontaneously unless you're gifted with words or a writer, but requires good amount of effort as well. If what makes people insightful is them being curious, observant, their ability to connect the dots and cut to the chase, can the same be said for the corporate organizations? How are some of the world's most consumer-centric organizations able to bring this ability to everyone in the organization? And how can one make corporates that are not very consumer-centric more insightful about their consumers and make them consumer-focused more than anything else? In other words, can the model of what makes a person insightful be applied to make organizations insightful? Let's try and translate the traits of insightful people into the organizational traits, and that gives us some interesting clues. Now here my slides will go a little haywire because I think they've got jumbled up, so pardon me for that. Curiosity, as we said, is about being genuinely interested in the subject and therefore having your ante naturally up all the time about it. In a corporate environment, it's imperative to make the marketing and other consumer-facing functions, and indeed everyone and all the functions, genuinely interested in the category, and more importantly, in the consumer behavior within the category. The business teams may not be curious about it naturally, either because they think the consumer behavior in the category is quite obvious, particularly if they have also been the regular users of the categories themselves, like soaps and shampoos, or because they think there is not much to know about that. I'm going to skip a few slides. For instance, the CEO of one of the large banks told me that they knew a lot about the banking needs of the customers because they served them every day and engaged with them regularly. But consumers don't have banking needs as such. They have need to take care of their money and the financial requirements, which are really important things to know if you want to understand why people are banking with you or not banking with you, or how the banking services can be improved. Take an example of a brand like Lux. It's a soap brand positioned as a glamorous soap being used by film stars. The brand has been selling on for more than 80 years now on that positioning. And in India, it still uses film stars to endorse the brand and continues to be one of the largest brands of soaps in the country. In today's world, particularly where celebrities and film stars are a lot more accessible via Instagram, Twitter kind of platforms, and arguably a lot less iconic, why do women use Lux? Do its users really believe they would start looking like the film stars endorsing the brand? If not, then is it only the functional benefits like fragrances and lather and skin feel, etc., that drive them to it? Or is it sheer availability of the brand or the convenient price point? If you're in the team brand Lux, you must intuitively understand what draws consumers to the brand. While a lot of market research reports will be available for you to read, it's spending time with the consumers, understanding her context, seeing her life through her own eyes, and the role that a soap like Lux plays in that context, that you would really begin to understand and internalize the insight on what Lux brings to the consumers. Consumer centricity is therefore not about commissioning market research alone through an agency. That's what I call a second-hand consumer centricity. It's about having an intuitive connect with the consumers of the category. If curiosity has been heightened, then people would notice a lot of details and would have appetite for a lot more information. There used to be a time when information used to be guarded heavily and very few select people in an organization had access to it. With the explosion of people sharing thoughts and ideas freely over the internet, thankfully the mindset has changed significantly in the corporate world. It is not the data and information that's power, it's what you do with it. I'm going to shuffle a little bit again. When people start to get curious about a category, they need to have ways and means to observe in an organization. In other words, access information about their categories and consumers. Initiatives like Unilever's Consumer Connect program, formal, informal market research, and other consumer data collected are the observations that are available for people in the organization to access. But information being available does not mean people will access it and will necessarily have a look at it. There are a few rules, in my view, that need to be followed for people to use the information available to make the decisions, instead of going back to the heuristics. One is information should be easily accessible. Research reports of hundreds of pages or cumbersome library systems are serious deterrents in people accessing information. When people can access information today through simple Google search, you can't expect them to be any less demanding in their workplace in this aspect. Second is information should be in bite-sized, digestible form. Social media has considerably reduced the attention span that people have. And if you can't explain your point of view in a few minutes, and that too in an engaging manner, you have lost the audience. Therefore, research presentations that go on and on and on for hours and involve poring over tables and graphs are passé. But smaller nuggets like videos or infographics or stories articulating the insight and the ideas springing it from it are a lot more acceptable now. When a lot of information is available, arriving at the right insights or conclusions requires connecting the dots. This is done by asking the question why, we all know that, and by following the critical thinking mindset. It then becomes a bit like Sherlock Holmes thinking when you generate several possible hypotheses and examine each one of them in details and eliminate the ones that don't fit. People who are insightful do it quite habitually, but in the business context, it can require some training and guidance for people to start thinking in that mode. And with some practice, people can always be in an investigative mode. There has been a lot of thinking and development in defining and refining the critical thinking in the academic circles for the past 50 years. But the early record of critical thinking are found in the teachings of Socrates and recorded by Plato. Critical thinking is generally defined as the intellectually disciplined process of actively and skillfully conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, and synthesizing the information gathered from the observations, resulting in an action to be taken. A few rules for getting into the critical mindset in my experience, which I borrowed heavily from the literature on inculcating Sherlock Holmes kind of thinking. One is engage or listen or observe the details. This is the part of gathering observations with the emphasis on paying attention to the details and scanning all the info available to you before the hypotheses are even formed. Be aware of your own biases. You might have built-in preference for certain things or might listen to some people more than others, which can impact the analysis. Third is be objective and examine everything with healthy skepticism. Fourth is be more engaged. Lean in more to counteract the autopilot-like initial judgment. Continuously educate yourself on the subject. We are not all poets to be able to have a natural ability to express things pithily, and hence this skill requires help in terms of guidelines and ways to articulate an insight, and equally importantly, actions that come out of it. At Unilever, we spend considerable amount of time and effort crafting insights, but also creating systems and protocols that allow everyone to create and articulate insights easily. One of the examples of this is 6P analysis. It's an internal framework we created using the principles of critical thinking to diagnose a problem and arrive at a solution. The output that's presented is in a simple traffic light manner that clearly articulates what the problem is and what are the things that need to be addressed. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of time and commitment to make an organization consumer-centric. Putting the right stones to creating the path, getting the buy-in from senior stakeholders for all this, and for the decision-making, showing the impact of the systems to the teams constantly and so on. The need of every organization obviously is different, so they would need to take a bespoke system that works for them, taking them on the path of consumer centricity. Thanks once again for the opportunity. This book is available on Google, of course, but what we've done is that your goodie bags that you will get tomorrow have a bookmark with the QR code to take you to Amazon directly, and it'll be available in the stores near you soon. Thank you very much. Right on time. I'm not sure we have questions for this module. No. Okay, good. Thank you.